Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been a varsity basketball coach of a very successful program. Piston fans, our Detroit Pistons made a big move. They just traded for Joe Harris to the New Jersey Nets, along with 2 second-round draft picks that we're going to get from the Nets. So, all the Nets are getting is basically a $20 million trade exemption. So we were below the cap. So teams that are below the cap, if both teams are above the cap, then you have to trade matching salary for matching salary. But that's why teams that are below the cap, we can trade for players and take on their contracts without sending another player to the other team. So along with Harris and his $19.9 million expiring contract, the Nets are sending the Pistons the 2027 second-round pick. It's from the Nets, but it was Dallas's pick. And the 2029 second-round pick that is the Bucks pick that they traded to the Nets. So they're not going to be probably high second-round picks, but second-round picks get to be used for a lot of different things in the NBA. And sometimes you can pick up a good player. I'm excited about Marcus Sasser. The one thing I could say, we traded 2 second-round picks. The one thing about second-round picks, if you get enough of them, then you're bound to hit on one of them. There's a lot of guys that are in that range in the late first round and the second round that, the earlier pick, the more likely it is to be a player that's going to be able to be a rotational player. But if you get a lot of later picks, then there's a chance that one of them will pan out. So anyway, we're not getting those picks aren't going to probably be too meaningful, but we could maybe use them in a trade later. Who knows? We could try to draft somebody, and maybe by 2029, the Bucks might not. Their team they got some hard decisions to make and some tough. They got Chris Middleton and Lopez to try to re-sign. But anyway, we're going to talk about our Pistons. So what this does is it gives us. He's got an expiring contract, so we get to keep Joe Harris this next upcoming season. And he is a great shooter. He is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. So we get to have him for this next upcoming season, and then his contract's gone. And then so next year we are going to have up to $50 million in cap space. So at least for free agency, and next year's free agent class is going to be way better. And I've been saying this, I would have been excited to get Cameron Johnson. I'm not going to lie about that, but the truth is we're better off this year. I've said this on podcasts, we're better off finding out where we stand. We're better off letting Asur Thompson get minutes and find out how he's going to play. We're better off finding if Livers can play a little bit, or just a lot of our players, how they're going to fit together. Where are the minutes going to come if we have Joe Harris and Bogey and Asar even. I don't know how all those minutes at the small forward are going to break down. But we don't have to even worry about playing Harris if we don't want to. If we need a three-point shooter, we could stick him in. We're committed to him for 1 year, and maybe we can trade him at the trade deadline. I'm not sure how all that works, but I think that it couldn't have hurt. This deal couldn't have hurt. I think that we must have. A lot of talk is done before the deadline, which is 6:00 today. I'm recording this, on Friday at 3:44, and so the official free agency opens at 6, where teams are probably going to start announcing what deals are done. We still have $7 million in cap space to play with, so we could still possibly make another deal. Wouldn't surprise me if we did. So I will come back on and do another podcast after that. But let's talk about Joe Harris a little bit more. He is 31 years old. He's about 6'6", and again, he was in 2020-21 season, he was the best three-point shooter in the NBA. He played in 69 games, averaged 30 minutes a game, averaged 14 points a game, shot 50% from the floor, 47.5% on threes. And, he's been for his career, he shot 44% on threes, which is phenomenal for the number of years he's played to be that elite. And he, everybody knows that's guarding him. Don't let him get an open three, and yet he still is able to shoot at this elite clip, that high of a percentage. So he's amazing. So this past year, so the Nets, they made that trade for Bridges and Cameron Johnson when they traded Durant, but they also had Dorian Finney-Smith, and they have another wing that I'm forgetting about that he's real good that they had traded for. So their wings were loaded, and so he only played 20.6 minutes a game, but he shot 46 from the floor and 43% on threes. So nothing but he's never been anything but an elite shooter, and he, like I said, he can shoot on the move. He can shoot coming off pin downs. He's just such a great 3-point shooter. So we have that to look forward to if Monty decides to use him. See how the minutes spread out. Because I do think some guys can just shoot. We talked about Asar and his shooting, and there's still a concern with guys like Killian, guys that can't shoot or haven't shot. You look at Giannis. Giannis works so hard and tries. He's worked on his game relentlessly for all these years he's in the league, and he's worked on his outside shooting, his 3-point shooting, his free throw shooting, and he still has struggled. And Draymond Green, he's this great iconic player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, but Draymond can't shoot. People don't even guard him at the 3-point line. He's got wide open threes. So that's why we'll see what happens with Asar, but it's exciting to see the Pistons make that move. I think that was maybe one of the best moves that they could have come up with. Like I said, we like Cameron Johnson, but I think that next year is the year that we'll know. We'll know, see how Cade, gets a healthy year and plays along with Ivy and plays along with Asar, and we just get to see how everybody gels. We figure out what we're going to do with our post players, and then we can jump in and make that big move and see exactly what piece we need to add. And like I said, there's a much better free agent class next year. So talk just about, we released RJ Hampton, so he had some good moments for the Pistons. I feel heartbroken. John Beeline, the great John Beeline, that he was coach at Michigan, and he was our senior advisor for player development. And he did a great job helping our players get better. R.J. Hampton, I remember after he had a big game where he scored like 27 points and shot really well, he attributed his shooting improvement to John Beeline, and I heard Jaden Ivey do that also. So I know that I can just even tell by watching them and their shooting form. I watched Coach Beeline, on the sideline working with players and seeing how he goes about it, and he was passionate. But when you bring in a new coaching staff, there's a big turnover. So again, all of Dwayne Casey's staff got let go, and so did Coach Beeline. So it's just a little bit sad for me, but hopefully the Monty's new player development players are going to be real valuable. So I did talk about last week about how valuable Sasser and Asar Thompson are going to be because they can stop the drive, and how we were terrible at giving up drives to the basket, and we had no rim protection really. And so hopefully we'll get that Duran's going to improve, and Weissman and Bagley will improve at their rim protection. But those two guys can do that. But another thing, I don't know if Monty will do it. You don't see many teams in the NBA full court press, but there can be some value to it. Asar loves to do it, and I'm sure that Sasser would be phenomenal at it. So you only get 8 seconds to get it up over half court, and then also when you press it, it runs down the shot clock, so it makes teams have to shoot under desperation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So it looks like the salary cap is going to go way up next year, quite a bit. There's going to be a $250 million increase. But what's really going to happen in 2025 is when the new TV deal kicks in. And so there's going to be, but I think they've made it so that they can only increase it a certain amount a year, but they might earn up to $50 billion in salaries and benefits over the next 7 years once that TV deal kicks in. So that's going to be huge. So a lot of the contracts, like you said, that they have now are going to look like they're not much by then. So another thing that interesting, we re-signed. Most people didn't think we would, but we got Yuji Mamarui re-signed, and he played with us last year, and um, he's tough. He's strong, hard-nosed, good defender. Can't shoot very well, but he's going to be at the end of our bench. But I know that he's valued as you know, a bench player that is going to bring toughness and determination and is going to be a good part of your culture. So when we played Oklahoma City, he had previously played with Oklahoma City, and all those guys, you could tell they still loved him and they took pictures with him. There were a lot of rumors speculating that Amarui would go back to OKC this year, but we have him again for one more year. And another thing I just want to mention, Marcus Sasser, he's such a great three-point shooter, but a lot of his three-point shots were step backs. And a step back where you drive in and you pull back, and because he's shorter, that helps him to create some space so he can get his three-point shot off. So it's going to be interesting to see that. And it's not easy. Most players shoot a low percentage, but obviously not Marcus Sasser. He's got it refined because his percentage was so good. A little bit of debate on who's going to start this next year, whether we're going to have Bogey start or Asor start, just exactly what the starting lineup's going to be. But I know that I don't know how much it would mean. Bogey has started every game that he's played for a bunch of years in a row. So he has this long consecutive start streak, and not that players make too much big deal about it or pay too much attention. It really is meaningless, but it'll be interesting to see how Monty handles that, if he's going to just automatically start him. I do think that when you got a guy that can shoot like Bogey, it's great to have him come off the bench sometimes. Another thing about it is if you bring him in off the bench, the other team has their second unit out, and Bogey is not a great defender, so you bring him in there, and now he's guarding the other team's second team players and not their top flight players, and so his lack of defense won't be as big of a deal, I don't think. So, yeah, teams under the cap can trade, and they don't have to send any players away, but they can take on money just like I talked about that John Collins contract. So, I'll quit. I know another thing. People talked about us taking Javon Carter, but that's another comp for Sasser. Javon Carter has shot the three great. He played for the Bucks. He's a free agent, but obviously we don't need him because we have Sasser. But he's a tough, pressures the crap out of the ball, and he can shoot the three, and that's kind of what Sasser does. But we were 28th the last 2 years. I think that's what really, Troy doesn't like that. We're 28th the last 2 years in defense, and so we got better defensively. Harris is not a great defender, so that's another thing that we'll have to see what happens. That Yuta Wannabe, or again, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He played for the Nets. He's a 6'8", 6'9" guy that can really shoot the three, but obviously I would say that we would not sign him now because we have Joe Harris. So we wouldn't sign another guy who's not great on defense that can really shoot the three. We wouldn't want, that would be redundant. So, all right, Piston fans, I might come back on again after 6 o'clock. After we see if there's any more Piston moves after the free agency starts at 6 o'clock this evening. But thanks for listening. Tell a friend about the broadcast, and also subscribe on YouTube, listen on Spotify, leave a positive review if you can. Do something nice for somebody today, and go Pistons.